which within this context, the web was a very static experience. There were lots of jumping around. I'm sure we can all remember pages and pages of links and clicking on the link, and you went to a site and you weren't really sure what you were going to get. It's a very one-way experience. We can all remember when Google came out and they had the "I'm feeling lucky" button, which today I think certainly feels very anachronistic. But at that time, you really were finding, it really was like trying to find a needle in a haystack in terms of finding the content that you were looking for. Then in the early to mid-2000s, we had Web 2.0, which was really about the web going social. Instead of the webmaster telling you what content was relevant, we could rely on other users. And we saw this in a couple of ways. Obviously, the creation of sites like Facebook, which has become the #1 most popular site in the world in terms of traffic, but has never created a single piece of content themselves. It's an entirely user-generated content strategy. But I think beyond that, we went from a paradigm where content sites were really one-way sites, where it was delivering up, say, a piece of news, and you went and you browsed their news, to a bi-directional site where you have blogs, you have community interaction, you have comments, you have ratings, you have reviews. So really across all sites, conversation and sharing really drove a higher level of engagement, and we could rely on other users to help tell us what was really, really relevant. I think simultaneous with this, we saw that content becoming more and more important. I think first it was really about, in a lot of cases, driving search rankings, but over time, we saw the implications of that around user engagement, user experience, conversion, and loyalty all being driven by content. So content's become more and more important. Again, as I said earlier, if you don't already believe that content is king, that's totally fine. That's not really the goal of today's webinar. It's really to introduce how web experience management plays into a context strategy that goes along with content. So what I want to focus on today is what I call Web 3.0, which is what we see emerging. And Web 3.0 is all about building what I call a smart website. We have all these ways we can track users on our sites, how they engage with our site, how they engage with email, how they engage with social. We have all this information we know about other users. We can see how are users similar to other users, how are they different from other users. But so few of us are doing anything with this information, so we still have these contents that force people down the same tracks over and over. So let's look at a couple of examples here. So let's take a typical marketer. She's probably a little bit ahead of the curve because she's using analytics to actually plan her content strategy. She's got articles on her site, she's got promotions on her site, she's got videos on her site, she's got social plugins on her site. She's got all these pieces of content coming into the site. But the problem with this is she's using a one-size-fits-all approach. So as an example, the average temperature in Boston is 51 degrees year-round. But whether it's the summer or whether it's the winter, knowing that it's 51 degrees year-round really isn't that helpful. And in the same way that the average temperature really isn't that useful, very few users are actually average. So the result is that we're serving someone up a parka when they're really looking for a swimsuit, or a swimsuit when they're really looking for a parka. So the result is for that user, the website really doesn't feel very smart. I have to follow the same path to reach the content that I'm interested in over and over. The site doesn't learn from me, and it doesn't get smarter based on my actions. So for example, let's say there's a sporting good website. I might go to that website on a regular basis, and I might always go to the lacrosse section because I'm interested in lacrosse-related products. But because baseball and football are the most popular sports, when I go to that site, I'm always going to see baseball and football-related promotions. So again, I think that's a great example of the website doesn't feel smart for me as a user, and it doesn't engage me in the way that it could. So let's look at a real-life example of a company that I think is actually a bit ahead of the curve, and we can see what are they doing well or what are they not doing well. So here's Nordstrom's. So this is a logged-in version of Nordstrom's. When I go to Nordstrom's, we can see on the top with a call-out, "Hello, Nate. Not Nate. Please sign out." So for me as a user, in terms of my user experience, at the bottom of the page, we see an area that feels really smart to me. It has the type of clothes that I might have purchased in the past, that other users with similar demographics might be interested in, and those are things that I'm likely to engage in. On the top half of the page, unless I have a secret habit for women's shoes or secret interest in those, which I can tell you that I don't, that huge area of that page is really wasted on me. I have no interest in seeing a pair of Jimmy Choos. No matter how beautiful they are or how interesting they are, that piece of content on that page has a 0% chance of engaging me. As a result, that's not a smart use of space for them, for the marketer who's beyond this site, because she's essentially wasting a lot of the page. Now let's look at another example from Nordstrom's, which is their email. So they send me this. I'm a semi-frequent mail shopper use case. I get an email from them. I'm really excited to open it, and I see Party Girl, and it features cocktail dresses, women's shoes, and earrings, none of which I have any interest in. So this is a wasted impression. So the danger of the wasted impression is a couple-fold. Number one, there's a wasted opportunity here in that I opened this email, I was excited about getting it, and it's like a huge letdown for me. But beyond that, it has the opportunity to really damage my relationship with that brand and my loyalty to that brand. There's a chance that if this keeps happening, I'm probably going to unsubscribe from their emails. I'm going to say, these are junk, these aren't targeted to me, they're not relevant. I get plenty of email, and in an era where we're all trying to stand out in a user's inbox, wasting this impression is just a huge missed opportunity. So who's really nailing this? We've seen, Nordstrom, which is a really big company, excellent internal marketing department. They do a lot of things right. Again, I think they're probably a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of what we saw in the previous slide with actually having a section that's targeted to me. But who's really doing this well? So I would ask, who's got the most effective website in the world in terms of accomplishing a business result? And I would have to say number one on that list is Amazon. If we look at the Internet Retailer Top 10 based on 2012 revenues, we can see that Amazon has $61 billion in revenues last year, which is just massive. Number two on the list is Staples at $10 billion. And in fact, if we were to add up Staples, Apple, Walmart, Liberty Interactive, Sears, Office Depot, Dell, Netflix, and Best Buy, numbers 2 through 10, combined, they're still less than Amazon. That's how effective Amazon is at driving revenues online. So it raises the question, right? Why is this, and what are they doing so right? Again, certainly there's a lot more items that Amazon's doing right that we could hope to cover in the call today. But I just want to pick out a couple of things. I think first of all, when I look at this product-related page, what we see here is that Amazon really understands how humans make purchasing decisions. And they really leverage heuristics to convert users. So a heuristic, right, is a rule of thumb. It's a way that people think about things. So what they've done is they've thought through really, really effectively and tested all the concerns a buyer would have, and they've covered them on this page. So the first question, right, is it a good product? So as a user, how would I assess if this is a good product? Well, Amazon obviously has really detailed descriptions. They have photos of the product. They have videos of the product. But they also have ratings and reviews, which tell me what other users think of it and give me an indication, again, a heuristic of, is this a good product? They also tell me what other products would I consider. So if I'm not going to buy this product, what are some of the other things that I would look at? So I might buy that camera on the lower left. Again, we had to cut this off in the interest of space, but they're going to tell me all the other products that I might consider. They would say, here's what's recommended for you. Here's what other users who looked at this product ultimately bought. Lots and lots of heuristics that I can use as a user to guide me into making the right purchase. They're also going to tell me what else would I buy with it. So in the top right, that frequently bought together, it's going to tell me if I bought this product and I really want a solution that's going to serve me well, what would I need to buy to really make this work effectively for me, and what would it cost? And then lastly, which isn't shown on this page, the price. So one of the things that Amazon's done really well is they've balanced selling themselves with their marketplace. In addition to creating the opportunity to have multiple businesses and multiple revenue streams, it really creates a synergy, and then it addresses the user's concern of, am I getting a good price? Because I'm going to see the Amazon price, and then I'm going to see prices from their marketplace, and that's going to tell me, our users, is the price that I'm getting a good price for this purchase? Now, if we look beyond the website and we look at their email, I went on the site, I looked at cameras, and a couple days later, Amazon sent me this email as a follow-up. So again, if we go back to what I talked about earlier about content and context, if Amazon went ahead and sent this email on best-selling compact system cameras to all of their users, they would probably get a fairly low open rate, a fairly low engagement rate, and a fairly low conversion rate into actually purchase of products. And that goes back to the sort of similar to the Nordstrom's example, where they're sending out this email on Party Girl to all of their users. Well, here Amazon is sending out an email on cameras, but they've targeted it to me after I've looked at cameras on their website. So when we think about content and context, this is a great example of doing it right. So we've looked at Amazon, so they're doing it right. Well, who else is doing it right? Well, let's look at another example. Netflix. So Netflix is another company that's very, very successfully leveraging personalization in their business, and it's really played a huge part of their growth and their success. Netflix, we can see here, is going to make suggestions for me based upon two axes. The taste preferences on the left, which is really shorthand for what I've told them, right? I've told them I like goofy TV comedies. I told them I like Arrested Development. I've told them I like South Park. And as a result, they're suggesting that I go watch 30 Rock. On the right-hand side, we see the because you watched. So this is activity-based. And this is important because users often don't know what they'll like. Users often don't have that awareness of being able to say, oh, I'd be interested in Twin Peaks. By having the because you watch, they're able to correlate it with what other users who have liked Mad Men have also been interested in. And personalization is actually so important in Netflix that I don't know if people remember this, but a few years ago they actually offered a $1 million prize to anyone who could improve upon their personalization algorithm. And I believe a guy in Switzerland actually won the $1 million prize by just getting a 1 or 2% improvement in their algorithm. And for Netflix, this was money well spent because the algorithm is so important to their success. By being able to predict what content people are going to be interested in, that's how they drive engagement. Because Netflix is a service where if you use it less, you're a lot less likely to continue to renew. So they have a very strong vested interest in keeping you engaged, and personalization is a huge part of how they do that. So in terms of the impact of personalization data, eConsultancy actually did a study of personalization last year. And what we see here is the percentage of marketers using personalization, which are the blue bars across different ways of using personalization. The impact on user engagement, which is the dark green, and the ROI impact, which is the light green. And we see that across the board, personalization is driving engagement and is driving ROI. For me, what's really surprising with this study, or really most interesting about this study, isn't that personalization is driving engagement and isn't that it's driving ROI. It's how few marketers are utilizing personalization. And we can see that, again, in those blue bars. We see 34%, 24%, and 24%, which are really the explicit item, where a user is telling us something about themselves. And as we go lower, we start to get into non-explicit data like web clicks or social graph data, where we're inferring information about the user based upon what we know about them. So it raises the question of why aren't more companies using personalization? Why hasn't WEM spread more? And I think there's really two issues that I've seen. I think number one is the lack of availability of the technology to do this. And I think number two is the companies not knowing how to implement it. It's so new that the know-how and the best practices really haven't emerged yet. So let's dig into those two issues a bit. The first is the technology availability, which is the first of the two issues that I mentioned, as I said. And we can see that this is becoming increasingly prevalent. We can see Adobe and Sitecore at the enterprise level are both really pushing personalization and web experience management as core parts of their products. For Drupal, which really focuses on the mid-market, we actually at Digital Bungalow built the technology for Drupal to enable web experience management because it didn't exist, and we wanted to roll out a site, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, which leveraged WEM. But even at the small business level, HubSpot has done a great job of rolling out personalization, segmentation, and customization for users, which are really the aspects that combine to make web experience management. So the technology is increasingly become available. So how do we put WEM into practice? Certainly we need a CMS that enables it, but what are the other aspects? So we really look at Digital Bungalow for 5 things. The first is we need the ability to analyze data and to segment users into groups. And this is really a key part of effective web experience management. We need to start to be able to look at users, and instead of focusing on the average user, we want to start thinking about users in segments. Preferably, we can integrate users from multiple streams. So the website, email, social, CRM. That's the data integration component, because the more holistic the picture we have of the user, the better those segments are going to be defined, and the better the sense we're going to have of what that user really looks like. The third piece is we need the ability to manage content. So we need a content management system, which is really the technology piece that enables us to manage content and enables us to have multiple options for specific content block on a site. And again, I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. The fourth thing is the segmentation, which I just mentioned briefly, but we need the ability to break those users into multiple pieces and personalize the content. And then the fifth and last piece is we need the ability to deal with users across different devices, not just PCs, but also tablets and mobile, because those are context too. A person on a mobile device is going to have different interests in the site than potentially than a user on a PC, and the same thing for a tablet. Those use cases have the potential to be different. In terms of the data sources which go in, as I mentioned, there's a wide variety of them. But to just name a few, certainly there's click history, there's demographics if a user is registered and logged in. There's the traffic source, where did they come from? If they came from a search engine, what keywords did they search for? Geography, where are they coming from? What time of day is it? What's the temperature outside? I mean, there's almost an infinite number of data inputs that we could use to maximize the context that we're giving the user, and that we can use it to really optimize the experience we're giving them. So that's sort of the theoretical piece, theoretical aspect of WEM. So what I'd love to do now is to show you a couple of real-life examples of how we put this into practice. So if we go from the abstract to the practical, how does that work? The first example I want to talk about is Humana. Humana is one of the largest private Medicare insurance companies in the country. We started working with Humana in 2008. As a company, they aren't allowed to market their products until people turn 64 and a half. They approached us in 2008 with a hypothesis, and their hypothesis was that by using brand marketing, not product marketing, they could reach users before they turn 64 and a half and create pre-need awareness and preference for their brand, and that when users did turn 64 and a half, they would be more likely to sign up for Humana products because they would already have an awareness of the brand and hopefully a preference for the brand. So back in 2008, they got a Retirement for Dummies book created, and later a Wellbeing for Dummies book, and we created the realforme.com website. And the site was very successful at getting people to come to the site and register. We got about 500,000 registered users over the first 3 years. And our client actually did a study about 3 years in, and they found that members were much more likely to become and stay Humana subscribers. And the ROI actually dramatically exceeded what they had projected and really hoped for. So this was phenomenally successful, and it really surpassed their expectations. And we were fortunate enough to win the CMO Council Award for Best Web-Based Customer Retention and Loyalty Campaign. So that was really exciting. Where we saw was an opportunity to build on this success was that we were struggling to get users to come back to the site. And as we dug into the data more, we saw that users who came back more correlated to higher purchase rates, bigger purchases, and greater loyalty. So what would we do? How would we build on that success that we have to enable ourselves to engage users more effectively? Well, deeper analysis showed us that a number of distinct user groups were coming to the site, each with their own needs and interests. Like I talked about earlier, the existing website and marketing strategy were tailored to that hypothetical average user. What we hypothesized at the time, this is back in 2011, into different groups, and customizing content for each group would ultimately, we used an explicit user assessment on the site, so users would come to the site and they'd take a quiz. We would take the demographics that we knew about the user if they were logged in, and lastly, so we would leverage click data. As I said earlier, we were actually developing this site on the Drupal platform, and we had to build the technology to enable this because it didn't exist. So we needed, again, the ability to have multiple pieces of content for a given block on a page, and we needed an engine to score users and decide what content to show them. So we worked with our client to put all those pieces together, and here's essentially what the output looked like. So here we see a generic non-segmented homepage. So if you come to the homepage and you're either haven't registered for the site, you're not logged in, or we just haven't modeled you into a specific segment, you see this version of the website. We see a picture of people having a barbecue with the headline, "Getting to know your neighbors," with some copy. And then we see down at the bottom, we see 7 different content modules: yoga, exercise, saving the planet, mending a broken friendship, vocabulary, saving for retirement, digital photo frames, and on the right-hand side we see a bunch of other recommended content. So in addition, now if we look at a health segment, so if we take a user who we've either demographically modeled as we think that they're going to be interested in health-related content, or based on their click data, they've shown an interest in healthcare, so they basically tended to click on health-related content. Or based on the quiz that they gave us, they showed an interest in health-related content. Now we see this version of the homepage. So this main content block, which was the barbecue content, now is about yoga. And 3 of the content blocks on the bottom are now about healthcare. So we've increased the weighting of healthcare on the page. On the right-hand side, we've also changed the content based upon what we know about the user. Now if we looked at the next segment, which is the retiree segment, again, we're going to change those same content blocks based upon what we know about the user. Now we're talking about building comfortable retirement, preserving our company's financial future, or legacy rather, and other blocks on the page. Again, family segment, if either demographically, based on click data, or based upon what the users told us in the quiz, they've indicated that family is their predominant interest, then we would show them family-related content. Ultimately, here's 4 segments. We could do as many blocks as the client wanted. So again, here you can see just on the home page, again, this is something that flowed through a number of areas of the site. You can see that we've made the content dynamic. We're trying to improve the context for the user by modifying the content so that the relevancy increases for them. So now let's look for a second at the results. Post-launch, we saw total visits go up by 36%. Unique visits went up 46%, and page views and visit duration were both way up. And our client and ourselves were fortunate enough to win a number of awards for this. So the client is thrilled. The ROI was fantastic. We got a lot of recognition, and the site was really, really successful. So that's one example. Now I just want to show you one more example, and then we're going to talk about just some of the key takeaways, and then we'll move on to questions. So the next example, which is also in the healthcare space, but shows a slightly different application of WEM. So Hologic, which is our client here, is a leading medical device company which is focused on advancing the health of women around the world. They are actually known as the Women's Health Company. And they were coming out with a really cool product, which is a breast tomosynthesis machine. And a breast tomosynthesis machine is essentially a 3-dimensional mammography machine which promises a higher degree of success in detecting breast cancer tumors. It does it in less time, and it's more comfortable for women. So this is one of those really exciting projects to do well as a company and do some good, because this is obviously a product that I think we can all get excited about and we can all believe in. What was interesting about this site, and the reason why I wanted to show this one, is that this is a client who has really diverse user groups. They have consumers who are primarily women, but they also have a number of personas and user groups within hospitals. They have doctors, they have administrators, they have finance staff, there's some other influencers, et cetera, et cetera. Because they had so many different potential user groups and use cases, we recommended Web Experience Management as a way to serve the diverse needs of these users. So in modeling this out, in this site, and this is, again, a great example of how WEM can be implemented for different websites and different clients based upon their specific scenario. We looked at really 2 axes. We looked at user type. So what content the user interacts with, we categorize them into one of our target segments. And I'm just showing two here. In this case, there was between 5 and 10, but we have an end user who's a consumer, and we have a decision maker who's someone who would work at a hospital. Then on the other side, we also had engagement level. This product is a big, complex sale, so we wanted to use to move users through a funnel towards purchase. So what we did is we scored users, and we would give them points for visits, watching videos, downloading white papers, commenting, etc. And they would get different numbers of points based upon the level of the interaction. So, for example, downloading white paper would be more points than just going and visiting a page. And as users move down this funnel, the content would change accordingly. And the cool thing about this is that the two strategies, the two axes, can work together. So we can actually handle engagement level differently for a decision maker than for an end user. For a decision maker, it's obviously more important because it's a B2B use case where they're making the decision to hopefully purchase a very expensive piece of equipment versus an end user who are really just trying to show that this product is something that they want, and we ultimately want them to call their hospital and say, hey, I would really like breast tomosynthesis. Do you have this available? And then lastly, just looking at the content placement on the page, we basically mapped out the page, and here's just a wireframe of the page. And we can see on the top half of the page, we see role-based content. In the bottom half of the page, we see engagement-based content. So if we go back to our screen here, we can see that the power and promises of breast tomosynthesis headline and the copy there, that's not going to change. No matter what we do on the site, that's going to remain the same. But we can see on the top half of the site that piece of content is dynamic, and then the videos or pictures that we're going to show below in those two content blocks are going to be different, again, based upon what we know about the users. Great. So again, just to summarize, I tried to go a little bit quickly to keep us on track, so hopefully I didn't lose anyone. Just 5 key takeaways for web experience management. I'd say number 1, the most successful sites in the web are utilizing web experience management to deliver the right content to the right user at the right time. Number 2, WEM delivers great website experiences for users. It's the context that's really going to drive engagement, satisfaction, and loyalty for our users. Users want to be delivered up really relevant content. One of the things I get asked about sometimes is the privacy concerns, and my experience has been that users actually really appreciate having content targeted to them as long as it's really relevant and it's done in the right way. Number 3, WEM is driving business results across industries. So whether it's an Amazon, a Netflix, a Pandora is doing this as well, or clients like Humana and Hologic for ourselves, as well as other entertainment and e-commerce clients, we're seeing that there's huge results for users, for companies across industries who use WEM. Number 4, WEM is becoming increasingly available to all companies. As we talked about, WEM's not just available at the enterprise anymore. You don't have to be using Adobe CQ5 to have access to WEM and to personalization. It's going down to the mid-market with Drupal and even the small business market with HubSpot. And successful WEM really requires 2 things. Number 1, technology, and number 2, know-how. So that certainly gives the technology piece, and I think for the know-how piece, certainly you'd need to reach out to a company that hopefully has some experience with implementing that, and certainly there's a few out there. And then number 5, as we saw across the 2 different examples I gave you, both of them featured WEM, both Humana and Hologic, but the implementation of the 2 was very, very different. One relied on demographic information, click data, and quiz information. The other relied on engagement information and role-based information. So we can use a wide variety of inputs and outputs. So that really covers the input side. The output side, it can be web, it can be email, it can be social. It's really, with WEM, it's really, if you can dream it, we can implement it. So, thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Nate. That was fantastic. And again, thank you to everyone for sticking with us during our technical difficulties. If you do have questions, you can submit them via the control panel on the right side of your screen. And we do actually have a couple already to start with. So, Nate, the first question is, I'm a little confused on the difference between personalization and web experience management. Can you clarify?
Absolutely. It's a great question. So personalization is something that's been around for actually a long time on the web. If we go back to like the My Yahoo screen or the My Google screen, where you could actually pick specific content blocks that would go on that screen, and then your email would show up in that screen, it's going to give you a unique experience. Web experience management is really an overarching term that encompasses personalization, which is that customization, right, which pulls together tracks of content for different users. So we might have 4 tracks for 4 different users. It also would include marketing automation, right? So with marketing automation, we're going to take what we know about you as a user, and we're going to put you into a communication track, or we're going to serve you up different content because of that. It's really more of a program that's going to encompasses all those things together. But ultimately, to me, what really defines web experience management, it's really about just context and content. It's about taking content and having different versions of content and delivering it to the right user at the right time, so delivering that context for them. So hopefully that answers it. If not, feel free to follow up or with another question, or we can also chat offline about it. This is pretty new stuff, so I do want to say, yeah, this is pretty new stuff. So I would say the exact definitions, I would say, are still emerging in a lot of cases.
As is everything with digital. We've received a couple questions about receiving a copy of this deck, so I just wanted to let everyone know now that we will be sharing a recording of this presentation. You'll get that in your inboxes tomorrow. I have a couple more questions here for you, Nate. One is there any concern that an entirely personalized experience will take away the feeling of comfort and routine that users seek? As a user, I sometimes resent the feeling that I'm being too handled. How do you strike the balance?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think it's important that it not feel eerie to the user. I think that we all, today's day and age, can tell when we're being retargeted. We go to the Honda website, and all of a sudden Honda ads start showing up everywhere. So I certainly think that there's an artful balance to implementing WEM in such a way that the balance feels right to the user. And if you look at the sites that we did or that we've done, in all cases, we haven't used all of the content blocks on the site for personalized or customized content. We've only used some. And I guess the other thing is that WEM is really dynamic. So one of the great things about it is that as we learn more about the user, someone might initially come and be modeled to do a health segment on the Humana site. But if they start clicking on more finance-related content, the site gets smart and learns from them and learns about them. So I'd say in that way, hopefully we address that concern.
Great. A couple more questions left for you, Nate. If there's any other questions out there from the audience, please submit them now. We'll be ending right on time. So the first question of the final 2 for you is, what type of businesses are not candidates for WEM, or what is the tipping point?
Yeah, I think the key is, I'd say the number one key thing is having the ability to create and manage the content. I think certainly sometimes when I talk to people about this, they get really excited, and I think it's important to make sure that your eyes aren't bigger than your stomach. So you need to make sure that you have the right agency relationship as well as the right internal team to be able to effectively implement this. And with that, I would recommend starting small. Start with 4 different segments or 6 different segments. Don't go straight to 15 or 20 different segments, because the content beast needs to be fed. And if you create 15 or different 20 segments, you're going to have to be creating a lot of content.
Great. The next question kind of relates to that one. If I'm a marketer in a small startup, do you need a big budget to adopt a practice like this, or are there things I can do to start now without an agency or technology to do it?
I think you need something. I mean, I think if you're in a small company, you might look at something like a HubSpot, which has some web experience management pieces built into it. I think certainly the idea of context is something that we can all think about. If you are in a startup, I would really be thinking about what's the context for delivering content for users. Even if you can think about users into a few different groups and think through how we're going to deliver relevant content. Certainly marketing automation in that context might be something you want to take a look at. And I don't think WEM is for everyone. I think where we're really focusing on it is with mid-market business to consumer companies. That's really for us where we found the sweet spot.
That makes sense. We've received 2 more questions, so we're going to go through these questions and then we'll end for the day. So the next one is, can WEM be implemented in responsive sites, or how difficult does it make it?
Yeah, I strongly recommend obviously going with either responsive or adaptive sites. Basically all the sites we're doing now for our clients are responsive or adaptive. I view this as going very much hand in hand with that. As I talked about earlier, what device someone is accessing the site from has a huge impact on the context. Sending someone an email which isn't mobile optimized to a user who's on a mobile device is not likely to be successful. So if that's part of your WEM strategy, you better make sure that that is optimized. Was there another half of the question, Jamie, or was that all of it?
I think that answered it.
Okay.
So our final question that we have time for today is, how are users able to still be exposed and view content that was suppressed due to WEM?
Well, all the content is still on the site, generally speaking. It's just a question of really what are we bubbling up to the home page. So if we think of sort of determined and undetermined users, a determined user, let's use that lacrosse site example that I gave earlier in the call where it's a sporting goods site and I'm a user and I'm interested in lacrosse. Let's have lacrosse content, promotions, coupons, discounts show up for me on the home page instead of football related or baseball related. Well, even if we're showing that lacrosse content on the home page, I can still browse to the baseball or football sections and see the content. The intent here really isn't to hide any content. It's just we want to bubble up the content that's going to be most relevant to the user.
That makes sense. One final question just came in asking about a framework for this and further resources. And I think, Nate, you would agree with me here that your website and your newsletter has a lot of resources in this particular area. Is there any special part of your site or blog that you wanted to direct people to?
Yeah, great question. I would say go on our blog. There's a bunch of resources on our blog, or hit me up on Twitter or drop me an email, and I can definitely point you to some resources. We actually have a framework for kind of looking at WEM and helping to evaluate if it's right for your organization. So if anybody wants that, just drop me a line and I can send it over to you.
That's fantastic. And as I mentioned before, we are recording today's presentation, so we'll have that for everyone as well. And that brings us to the end and all the time we have today. Thank you, everyone, for attending and sticking with us through those technical difficulties. I know I'm really glad that it all worked out, and that your presentation was fantastic. On behalf of MyTex, I'd like to invite you to attend Future M, where we'll be exploring topics just like today's that really address the future of marketing and the way that digital is changing the practice of modern marketing. For those of you who are interested, early bird registration does end today, so make sure to purchase your all-access pass before the end of the day at futurem.org. If this was a live event, I would ask for a round of applause right now, but unfortunately that's not possible. So thank you, Nate. Thank you, Digital Bungalow, and thank you to all the attendees who were with us today. We appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, everyone.